Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me today when I'm talking about podcasting 2.0, what it is and how to set it up, and also how to be a podcast listener on this new kind of way to stream money with Lightning, Bitcoin, and yeah, it's decentralized money for decentralized content. I will tell you why I think this is important. So I'm going to talk about the stuff in general, podcasting in general, how podcasters can make some money, what kind of tools we have for digital independence, the goals and the ecosystem of podcasting 2.0, what namespace tags are and why do we need it, the potential value flow for podcasting 2.0, meaning how much income can you make if you want to make some income from your podcast, how the listener experience is in podcasting 2.0, and how listeners and podcast owners can set up their Sphinx app and their Lightning node to join a Sphinx tribe, and what everything is. I will tell you that also. Then which properties these kinds of a self-sustained ecosystem then has. And I'm running my Sphinx tribe since 1.5 months now, and I'm going to tell you the results, what I've seen. And then in the end, you will get all the resources that you need to build your own tribe or to join a tribe. For all those who don't know me, a short introduction. My name is Anita Posch, and I'm a Bitcoin podcast host. I'm also the author of a German beginner's book about Bitcoin, and the translator of Andreas Antonopoulos' series, The Internet of Money, to German. And I'm also a proud member of the board at Bitcoin Austria, which is a non-profit organization that works for the distribution of knowledge about Bitcoin in Austria. I'm hosting my podcast, the Anita Posch Show, on my own web space. So I have a server that I've rented from a company in Germany, and I'm running my website and my podcast on WordPress, self-hosted. And I'm actually wondering why not more Bitcoin podcasters do that, because I think it's in the spirit of Bitcoin to self-host your own podcast and not use Anchor or Acast or Blurberry or Libsyn or any kind of these podcast servers. And I'm using the Podlove plugin. The Podlove plugin enables me to store my MP3 files on my own server, and from there they are distributed over my RSS feed into the different podcast apps, so the ones that you have on your smartphone where you listen to podcasts. So basically all of those get their content, my episodes, from my server. The Podlove podcast plugin is I think it's called a standalone plugin for WordPress. It's developed, as far as I know, from German developers. And I think it's a great tool because it allows you it has all the tools you need basically as a podcaster. It gives you also detailed analytics. You can have chapters and seasons and transcripts, basically everything you need. They are not. I opened how's it called on GitHub? No, I opened a question basically if they would like to embed the new namespace tags that are needed to connect a podcast feed to the Sphinx app and then to the Lightning network. We'll see if they are into it. I'm not sure if they really like Bitcoin. I don't know yet, but we will see. There are different forms of income generation for podcasters. I mean, I know a lot of podcasters don't want to get any kind of income out of it, which is great. I think they just do it for fun or to learn something or for marketing. That's great. I'm one of the podcasters who also wants to earn some money with it. I need to pay my rent, and I have free sponsors at the moment, and I'm doing so-called static ad insertion. That means I have these free ads in my podcast always at a fixed base, so it doesn't move. And I think it's also, I'm like looking for products and sponsors who really fit to my content and bring something positive also for my listeners. If you want to make money with podcasting, then there are several possibilities. On the one hand, you have donations. I think that's basically the way podcasting came into the world. Also, people donated for their favorite podcast hosts and their work. You can set up a Patreon account, and people can donate to you over Patreon, which has the advantage in the European space that Patreon handles all the tax issues for you, because it's actually very complicated. If you want to comply with European tax law, then Patreon does a lot of work for you on that end. But of course, it's a centralized service, and we now have other possibilities with Bitcoin, which is great. Then there are podcast hosting services where you have to pay for listening to podcasts. And we also know these kind of subscription models from Netflix or Amazon Prime. You have to pay a fixed amount per month, and it doesn't count in a way if you use it or not, you just pay. And the latest development in podcasting is that we are going more and more into walled gardens, as we also know it from social media platforms, Gmail, Facebook, etc. This year, Spotify signed an exclusive contract with Joe Rogan and also Michelle Obama and other big names. And I think from 2021 on, you will only be able to listen to Joe Rogan on Spotify. Yeah, if you want to listen to him. And those walled gardens, of course, and the interest of these big companies lead to profiling of podcast listeners. All those services, they are collecting data about their listeners to be able to serve targeted ads. And then we have something that's called dynamic ad insertion. That's then basically the podcast host or the service you're using for your podcast is inserting ads wherever it thinks it's good. And this can have the side effect that you are talking about something and you are interviewing somebody, and suddenly you have an ad in the middle of the talk which doesn't really fit to the content. And these centralizing developments in podcasting, I think they are very critical, and I oppose them in a way, of course. And just today, I found the story of a woman who ran a podcast network from 2015 to 2020. And she is writing that they have shut down now their little business. From 2015 to 2017, they earned over $500,000 US. And from 2018 on, it became more difficult. Sponsors want more and more detailed data about the listeners, more campaign integration. They have ever increasing return on investment requirements. So basically, the suits come in and everything has to be more efficient, and everybody wants to earn more. And so they interfere a lot with you and your show, and which is, it's understandable from the sponsor side, but for the host, that's basically a big negative. And also, as I just said, they are starting to use, let's say it from the other side, podcasting is one of the last domains where the listeners are not tracked that way as they are tracked on Facebook or Google. And Spotify is starting with that, and they want to suck in all the small podcast hosts, I think. And Bitcoin is basically our safe haven in a way to protect us from the surveillance capitalism and kind of government control. Yes, I know Bitcoin is not really a privacy money at the moment, but when we use Lightning payments, as we do in Podcasting 2.0, then transactions are basically untraceable and people can stay anonymous. So I was talking about the last domains of digital independence. That's, in my view, email. So of course, many of us use Gmail, Yahoo, or something else, but you can also quite easily buy a domain and use your own email. So you're self-hosted in a way and independent. Newsletter is also one of the tools that is free to use. Yes, many of us use MailChimp, me included, but I think I go back to self-hosted with PHP list, which funnily enough, I did like 10 years ago. Website, your domain, your website. Yes, I'm hosting it on a managed server at a company, but basically, I think that they shut me down is less of a risk than if I would be on Squarespace or Wix. And of course, podcasting. RSS feed is an open standard. It's free. Everybody can use it. And as I said before, you can self-host your podcast with something like the Podlove plugin on WordPress. And with Bitcoin, we have basically the perfect money to be able to pay for all the content that is created independently. And I think it's a perfect match. Podcasting 2.0, what is it? What are the goals? So the goals are that to free podcasting from more and more corporate control and those walled gardens, to secure free speech, to have an uncensorable medium of voice and opinion, that it's an open system so everybody can be a host, everyone can listen to it and everybody can join it, that we don't need to, we are free to put in ads, but we don't need to use ads, and that there is no data collection, and a kind of an income generation for content creators and also the developers who develop all these tools. They call it the value for value model. So basically, listeners shall pay what they want, what they think it's for a value for them. And in the end, the goal is to have a self-sustaining ecosystem for podcasting. And for me, as I said before, I think the medium of a podcast with RSS feeds is a decentralized medium, an uncensorable voice medium. And together with the decentralized, uncensorable money like Bitcoin, you really can sustain independent content creation, which is definitely not possible with euro or US dollars over PayPal or Patreon or whatever. A little bit about the ecosystem. What is Podcasting 2.0? Who is the initiator, or who are the people behind it? So basically, one of the parts of Podcasting 2.0 is the podcast index that you can find on podcastindex.org. It's an open directory of RSS feeds. Basically, it's the Apple catalog, but only free. So most of the podcast players get their RSS feeds or information from Apple directory. And there's a guy called Adam Curry. I don't know if you've heard from him. He's said to be the podfather, so basically one of the inventors of podcasting, and a developer called Dave Jones. They together have launched this open podcast movement, basically Podcasting 2.0, because they are worried that Apple is starting to tinker with their directory and say that Apple, which is true, of course, is a very centralized private entity that is controlling pretty much what everybody considers the default yellow pages for podcasting. So there will be no podcast feed will be cancelled in the podcast index. And they also started to get ahead a little bit of the movement to create a namespace development, a structure that are basically tags that define properties of podcasts or episodes, yeah. And this is not something that is only for the project I'm talking about now, the Sphinx connection over Lightning. It's basically for all the podcasts out there and all the hosts. It's open for contribution, so if you want to work on that, feel free to connect with them. They have implemented new namespace tags, and like, for instance, soundbite, which is great. You can send, I think it's 30 seconds of sound over a chat or a link, or share it somewhere. Also, name tag and location for podcasts is in the making. Then there is a namespace tag that's called funding, where you can put in a funding. Well, for instance, you can put in your Patreon URL, but you can also put in Telecoin, tip in me, of course, or everything that's possible in a link, or your PTC Pay server site. They also have a app overview, apps that already use the podcast namespace. And there you can see which element they support. Then there's a kind of a business plan in a way for this potential value flow that could work on a daily basis. Like if you say we have 100 million US podcast listeners, and those are listening for an hour per day on average, if you convert only 1% of them to use podcasting 2.0 at a $1 rate per hour, so you pay $1 per hour listening to a podcast, then you would have a daily flow of $1 million US. And the thing with podcasting 2.0 is they are building it that way that automatically 1% of this flow could be flowing to the developers, for instance. I will explain that later on. So what's the listener experience now with podcasting 2.0 on Sphinx? So Sphinx and Castopod are the only podcast hosts or apps I know at the moment that integrate this value namespace tag that you need to integrate it with podcasting. So now I'm talking about the Sphinx app, and you can, if you have the Sphinx app on your smartphone or on your desktop, you can basically join a tribe, which is a group chat that integrates with the podcast. And as you can see, users can send messages. It's like in a Telegram group, but with added podcast. You can boost messages. So for instance, this message in the middle, say, thanks, hello, lol, I'm loving the Sphinx app. I boosted this message and sent 50 sats over to this person. And then Brian boosted my podcast and sent me 333 Satoshis. On the right-hand side, you can see the podcast player, how it is looking in the chat app. And you can see, you can play, you can change the speed, you can move 30 seconds forward. On the left-hand side, you see this quote symbol. That's the thing where you can send a sound bite. And on the right-hand side, if you are like here a segment that you like, especially what the guest is saying, for instance, then you can push the green button on the right-hand side and boost this segment of the voice. Yeah, so you can really specifically boost sections. So if I'm a listener and if I want to use this stuff, what do I need? So what you need is a Lightning node with key send and Sphinx relay enabled. I will talk about that later. You need the Sphinx Chat app and connect that to your Lightning node. The next step is to go to Tribe's sphinx.chat and join one of the about 40 podcast tribes. In total, I counted it a week ago, there were 130 tribes, but it's fast growing. Okay, so the first thing you need is a Lightning node. I run a RaspiBlitz. That's why I'm talking about the RaspiBlitz. But it's also possible to rent the Sphinx node or to use it on a My node, Raspberry Pi. The thing you need to do is to accept key send in the node settings. And the second thing is upgrade to version 1.6.2 because this version enables the Sphinx relay server that you need. So I'm not a developer. I can put all those things together, but I'm not a coder. So I put this in for you to see what the Sphinx relay server is. Basically, it enables sending chat messages in the Sphinx app over the Lightning Network. And every time you send a message inside a tribe, it's a key send payment to the tribe owner, who then distributes it to the other members over the tribe server. The next step after installing Sphinx Chat Relay is that you connect your RaspiBlitz with your Sphinx Chat app. And for that, you open the Sphinx Chat app and you have a button, or you can open a QR code reader, and then you scan the QR code on your LCD of the RaspiBlitz. And that's basically it. And then those are connected. What is the Sphinx Chat app? It's a decentralized app running on the Lightning Network. You don't need to use the Sphinx Chat app. So basically, everybody could code or develop a chat app that runs on the Lightning Network that can be connected with Podcasting 2.0. There's no need to use Sphinx, but at the moment, it's the only app we have. You can send paid messages, of course. And the upside also is that it's basically spam protection at the same time. You can build paywalls, you can buy digital downloads, for instance. You can say, I'm logging an image, and you can only see it if you pay for it. You can set up recurring donations. The Sphinx guys also have a Sphinx donation widget that you can put on your website and enable recurring donations, just like it is in Patreon, and enabling what Andreas Antonopoulos was talking about, I think 4 years ago, streaming money for podcasts. And I think one of their goals is also to link recurring payments to files to be enable to use cases such as subscribing to a podcast with Bitcoin. So that's the idea behind the Sphinx Chat app. It's available for iPhone, Android, Mac, Windows, and Linux. As you can see, it's still in test flight on the App Store. And for Android, you have to download the file over the website and then install it manually on your phone, on your Android phone. Yeah, so what are the settings that you have to do? In your profile, you put in the address, that's your node pub key. In the advanced tab, you put in for the server URL your node URI. Then you can set up the default tip amount. That's at the bottom of the screen. That's the amount that you boost messages with. So basically, whenever I hit the green arrow button, I send 50 sats to the other person or inside the chat. And on the bottom, you see you can export your keys to set up the app on another phone. Then you move over to tribesphinx.chat and scroll through all the wonderful podcasts we have. And you can chat then with people in the tribe and with the host about the podcast. And what is a Sphinx tribe server? As I said before, please look it up on GitHub. Basically, a tribe server allows the discovery of tribes for the member nodes. And when a member publishes a message to the admin over the Lightning Network, is basically paying something, then the admin can accept the message, and at that time it's published over the tribe server out into the open. So how can you join a tribe? You take your Sphinx app, open the QR code scanner, and you scan the QR code that is listed at the tribe on the website. There you also can see the price to join, the price per message, the member number. Yeah, that's basically it. And if you do that, you're immediately in the tribe. How does the setup for a podcast owner look like? So basically, the first steps are the same as for members. You need a Lightning node, you need the Sphinx app, you need to connect them. And you need to enable those namespace tags I was talking about, called podcast value and podcast value recipient, into your RSS feed. And not only the tag, but also the recipients, because you can do an automatical revenue split. You can do that at the moment at podcasterwallet.com. If you have done that, you can set up your tribe in Sphinx. So what's the value tag? The value tag is enabling Bitcoin and Lightning flow in a way. It's not finalized yet, so therefore it's not implemented in podcast hosting services or apps besides Sphinx. And just today I learned about Castopod, which is also a podcast hosting tool that has enabled the value tag already. The second thing is what I said, the value recipient tag, where you can define who gets which split of the income, and this is automatically distributed then. That's the Castopod website. They already enabled the value tag. I'm very interested in this project because it seems to be an open source, self-hosted possibility to publish your RSS feed and your podcast. And actually would be quite nice to have a specialist who is really interested in pushing this technology forward. They also say on their website that they are using blockchain technology, but I really don't know which kind of. I asked the founder, but I have not received an answer until today because it was just 1 hour before the talk. So that's the Podcaster Wallet interface where you can add the value tags for Sphinx. At the moment, as I said, in the end, your podcast hosting service should, where the RSS feed is built, there you should be able to put in the value recipients and activate the value tag. So, but at the moment, you do it at the podcasterwallet.com website. Okay, next step is to set up a tribe. There you open your Sphinx app and you can see the button here on your profile, add a tribe. And to set up a new tribe, you only need basic information, the name of your podcast, the cover image, a description. You can add tags for the tribe's Sphinx website. The price to join, yeah, as you can see, you can say, I want people to pay like 100 sats to join, but you can also leave it empty and say it's free to join. Also, the price per message, you don't have to set up something. You can leave it as it is. The amount to stake is basically the spam protection mechanism. So every subscriber has to pay this fee for each message. And if the host or the owner of the tribe says this is spam, then they don't get the money back. And on the other hand, if after, in my case, 12 hours, or you can see here, the time to stake is 12 hours, then the escrow, the amount is returned to the subscriber if it was not spam. And you can also see on the right-hand side the RSS feed URL, and you can decide if you want to show your tribe on the registry on tribes-sphinx.chat or not, or if you want to have a private tribe that requires permission to join. And this is how it looks as soon as you have podcasting enabled, as soon as the RSS feed is in the app. There's nothing more to do. And you can see on the left-hand side the cover and the podcast player controls. In the middle screen, I'm showing how to share a soundbite. So I just pushed the quote sign, and then you can see you can add a message to it, and then you can send it into the chat. And on the right-hand side, this is how the screen looks when you boost the podcast while you are listening. This is animated, of course, and makes a lot of fun to boost other podcasts. Okay, as a podcast owner, you of course want to know how many sats have been flowing into your node. And what you see here is my ThunderHub interface. ThunderHub is a Lightning Node Manager tool that you can activate in your RaspiBlitz, and it has these beautiful transaction reports. Basically, on the bottom, you see invoice, invoice, invoice. These are free payments that came over the Sphinx app. But there should be a field that tells me that it's coming from Sphinx, but I haven't found it. I didn't find it until now. So maybe somebody can help me find these custom records. But basically, then you can see how much money you earned in a month or in a week. Another possibility is the Zeus wallet. It's also doing beautiful reports, and you can send and receive money, and it connects to your own node. And you can also set it up in the RaspiBlitz interface. So that's basically the foundation for a decentralized and self-sustained ecosystem. I mean, we are in the very, very early stages. Not everything is working, and yeah, a lot of brain and work is going to flow into that, but basically it works. So it's really here, and I think that's fantastic. And it's important to note that every building block can be hosted independently. So there's really no need for a central server or a central database. It's open source, it's open for contributions, so everybody can join and work with it, for it. And the interesting thing I heard in the Podcasting 2.0 podcast the other day is that it's also possible, or will be possible, to implement the boosting mechanism, let me say it that way, in other Lightning wallets. So for instance, if you're using the Electrum Lightning wallet, for instance, there could be a possibility that you pay your favorite podcaster directly into the chat app over the Electrum wallet. At least that's how I understood that. And I think it would be a great possibility. So for me, this is a perfect match, because the properties we have here now in podcasting, with being able to earn money in Bitcoin, is we have a permissionless podcasting ecosystem, and also the possibility to earn something, micropayments, which we need, so which are so needed for this space. Because if I'm a user, I really don't want to pay fixed subscription fees. I want to pay what I use, and that's possible with Lightning micropayments. it's finally settled. So no need, no hassle with paying back stuff or something like that, or going to PayPal and say, hey, when do I get my money? You have this automatical income distribution, which is great because you don't need to work so hard to get the money distributed to all the people who work with you on the podcast. It's transparent. You can make all kinds of reports and logs, and it's still anonymous. It's borderless. It's working worldwide. No need for friction with payment providers. It's completely decentralized and censorship resistant. So a match in heaven for me. Yeah, and my experiences in December 2020, I have 16 members in my tribe at the moment, and the price to join is 1,000 sats and 5 satoshis per message. And it's quite surprising to me. And to be honest, I'm not really sure if it's true, because as I said before, I can't really differentiate between the podcast streaming and maybe somebody has sent a donation to my Node. I don't know really. But in December, it was 500,000 sats, which is quite astonishing to me, because with only 16 members, maybe somebody has listened very long and a lot to my podcast. So, and for instance, there could be an example split of the income, like automatically 1% goes to the podcasting 2.0 app developers, 1% goes to the Sphinx developers, 98% would go to me, and I could redistribute it immediately also. If I have a co-host, 10%, something for the podcast editor and something for a transcriber or other freelancers, you know. And it's fully automated, you have logs, and it's anonymous. Yeah, and if you want to join, if you're interested in setting up a tribe or joining a tribe, the podcast index is on GitHub. They have a website at podcastindex.org. They have a Mastodon and Twitter. Sphinx, the same. They are at sphinx.chat. Tribes, Sphinx.chat, and they have a GitHub site, of course, too. So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and you understand Sphinx and podcasting 2.0 a little bit better now. If you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much, Anita. This was a great overview. And we have around about 10 minutes if there's any questions. So anybody from the audience, now feel free to let us know what you want to know. So yeah, here.
So did I understand it correctly that this is completely voluntary and optional to pay, because the RSS feed is still a normal RSS feed, and if my RSS, my podcast player doesn't understand this value tags, I can still download the MP3 just normal as I normally would, and wouldn't know anything about this payment system. Or is it somehow blocked that I can only listen to the podcast if I pay?
No, you mean when you are on another podcasting app and not the Sphinx app? Yes, okay. So if you use, like, I don't know, any other podcast, like Google Podcast or whatever, yeah, it's still free. And it will be free forever. I mean, you can also, if it's on the Sphinx app, you can decide, you can leave it free so that nobody has to pay anything. It's really voluntarily.
And as a user, I can choose as well, nah, I don't want to pay, I just want everything for free.
If you are in the Sphinx app and the podcast owner has set up, yes, you can, sorry, because you can choose in your profile how much you want to pay for a message, and you can also define the value if you want to pay something for for listening to the podcast or not inside the Sphinx app. You can put it to 0, so you can listen to it and you don't have to pay.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.